Let's shatter a few myths about pre-talk. There is so much power in the pre-talk to do good things, to start the change or the release process, to modify behaviours, to gather our information, all sorts of stuff. But what do we do as hypnotherapists? Hypnotherapists, me included sometimes, do you know we're the worst people for following rituals? As you have been taught, so shall you do. Disengage brain. We're better than that. So I made the mistake this morning of Googling Hypnotherapy Pre Talk. Try it. You get the same monologues. You need to tell the client what hypnosis is. You need to tell them they won't be a zombie, they won't bark like a dog, that their moral framework will remain intact. Does anybody want to hear any of that? I don't. You don't. So just taking a step back from that, what can you do with pre-talk? Okay, so the client knocks on my door, open the door. Thanks for coming. Take a seat. I gather basic information, name, address, who their doctor is, email address, that kind of thing, for the sake of good record keeping. From that moment on, my client intake begins. So, tell me why you're here today, in your own words, in your own time. Make a few notes. Let them explain in their words. Because remember, if you've got a prescribed list of questions, such as a client intake form, their answers are fitting your questions. So you're going to get a better quality of answer, perhaps with more depth, perhaps leading on conversationally into other things that they may not have told you because you hadn't asked, or it wasn't on your form. So you get more information, you get better information. If you believe in the need, again, this is how we're all taught, the need to establish rapport, you're gaining rapport by involving that person in something that's a lot more than a set of A4 sheets with neat little boxes. So inevitably, that conversation is going to come to what the issue is, what the problem is. Here's your opportunity to start drilling down. Well, I'm here for anxiety, I have panic attacks on a morning, I can't do the school run anymore, etc., etc. I'm here for weight loss, I'm 300 pounds, etc. You've got lots of opportunities in the pre-talk section, the pre-hypnosis section, as I prefer to call it, because there's a lot that goes on. You've got lots of opportunities to facilitate change in the client in your pre-talk, and we neglect it. For example, the weight loss client. So why are you, etc., etc.? Well, I sit there every night, I put Netflix on, and I eat cake all night. I really like cake. Okay, now you could just stop there and make your notes. Client eats cake every night, or cake is the problem, for example. But you can go further with pretty much whatever the illustrated problem is. Okay, let's look at that for a moment, Susan. Who buys the cake? I do. So you do the grocery shopping? Yes. And who writes the shopping list? I do. So who opens the cupboard and decides to put decides to put cake on the shopping list? Well, I do. Okay, so on an evening, we acknowledge that this is what's led to your weight gain. On an evening, who is it that goes to the kitchen cupboard and gets the cake out and cuts it up, puts it on the plate, goes back to the living room, all those different steps? Well, I do. Okay, so what could we do differently? Because you know where this conversation's going, Susan, don't you? You've got 15, for example, 15 bad decisions that have led up to your weight gain. The cake going in your mouth is just one of them. So let's look at what you can start to do differently. It's cognitive reprogramming. If you want to give it a name, put it in your pre-talk. It works. So how cognitive reprogramming, in a nutshell, works is you've got an identified problem, the thing that the client's doing, then you've got a route up to that problem. So you give them a different route that doesn't culminate in that behaviour, whatever that behaviour is. But here's the key bit, the power of the pre-talk. You can then defer responsibility back to the client, effectively like homework, if you like, for them to do that thing, or them to do that thing differently, or be conscious of that thing, knowing what the risks are to themselves, to their health, their happiness, or whatever else. So you're going to get, with things like that, those simple exercises in cognitive reprogramming, you are firmly maintaining all responsibility for the therapeutic outcome with the client's engagement. Forget the idea that therapy is something that we do to people or at them, that it's almost like a box that we pass them that they take and everything is sorted. It's not. So put cognitive reprogramming in your pre-talk. Another thing that goes in my pre-talk conversationally, and this is part of the structure, this is part of the clever bit. When I ask a question, I will qualify why I'm asking that question with a little bit of extra information. So you might say, okay, give me 5 words that relate to what you don't like about your anxiety. And the reason I'm asking that question is because inside you is that non-anxious version of you. You haven't always been anxious, as you've said, you've been anxious for 8 years, but prior to that you were okay. And that version is still inside you. And your subconscious mind, the deeper bit of your mind, if you like, is listening to this conversation. So already, we're starting to change by looking at those negative words. Then we'll look at the positive words that will apply to you, will apply to you when we've done what we're going to do today. See what you're doing, you're improving, increasing their cognitive engagement. You are also calibrating their information. That feedback is calibration. You get more information about where they're up to or down to. You can then feed this back to the client in later sessions. So the client comes back the next week and they're telling you about how much better their week is, that they haven't had any panic attacks, etc., etc. So feel free to mention back to them conversationally, so do you remember those 5 things that you're looking for that will indicate that you're not anxious? Think about how much closer you are to those now than to the negatives that we talked about last week. I think we can get rid of the negative list now. Let's keep moving you forward. It's engaging. It's convincing. The client doesn't need any convincing because all this great information is coming out of their mouth. You're just eliciting this. You're just teasing it out. And I'll tell you what, there's so much power, if you want to use that word, in getting the client to have those little moments of, oh yeah, I hadn't realised that. They're incredibly powerful. Because in that moment, all the cogs start whirring in the right direction, i.e. toward their happy outcome. So, something else. I said those little bits of information that I slip in near the questions. You know what that avoids? What I think is the death of pre-talk and smashes rapport straight out the window. It's that uncomfortable point in the pre-talk where the hypnotherapist says, I'm going to explain to you what hypnosis is and isn't. You won't be stuck to the chair. You won't, you won't lose your moral framework. You won't be under my control. Think about the language of those conversations. Just stop. Break away from those rituals that you've been taught, those things that must go in the pre-talk, must they? Must they? Or if you think they must, by breaking it down and intersecting it with the questions that you ask and just slipping a couple of sentences into conversation where they are relevant, you've got the information across. You've responded to the client. You've established rapport without being artificial. You've established rapport without being artificial. And importantly, you are taking the client on your journey. It's up to you what happens in that therapy room. You're leading that client to their outcome. You're the professional, not them. You're driving the ship. So anyway, you've avoided having to give those tedious, boring, irrelevant speeches. And okay, it's fine. It's fine if you're watching this and you're thinking, no, but the client needs to know what hypnosis is and the client needs to know that they're not going to be a zombie. Do they? Just ask yourself that question. Has anybody ever said, am I going to be a zombie? No, they haven't. And you know the other thing? And here's possibly the best and simplest reason why those speeches need to go. If somebody has seen your advert for hypnotherapy, hypnosis, or they've come across your website looking for a remedy for whatever it is, and their belief system is that you're going to be a zombie, they'll never enquire. So why are we preaching to people who have come to see us? Why are we preaching to the choir? Why are we doing that? That's just the way I see it. So, quick recap: information gathering conversationally. If the customer, client, person, as I prefer to call them, if the person says, the problem is anxiety. Some people don't talk very much. Drill down. Okay, give me 5 experiences of your anxiety, or 5 words that relate to your anxiety. Here's an important bit. This information gathering is not just about making irrelevant notes that you'll never ever read again. It's gathering information that you can feed back to the client in the hypnosis part of the session. Anything you feed back that's in the client's own language is going to resonate with them so much more. You're going to connect far better with whatever the subconscious mind is. We could talk about that for days, so I won't, or isn't. You'll connect far better with what the subconscious mind is. Their gatekeeper, their defences, if you like, won't be alerted because you're using their language. Think what I said about rapport. You're creating that feedback loop with them. So that is the purpose of your information gathering. It isn't just a fascinating case history. It's a lot more than that. Remember to put your cognitive reprogramming. Take the opportunities to facilitate change or give the client homework. Because then you see, think about the responsibility for the outcome of the therapy and it not being something that we do at a client. If the client comes back the next week and they say, I don't know, I've fallen off my bicycle again. Okay, well, I did suggest that you got some knee pads. You know, your leg's all cut. Yeah, I know, but that meant going to the shop and it's... Okay, so responsibility is then on the client for why they've cut their knees again. Do you see? You can pass responsibility back to the client. Now, what this isn't, what I'm not trying to create here is an environment where, hey, it's not on me. It's all the client if it fails. What I'm talking about is a way of steering that ship. So the client is on your predetermined journey as the therapist. So when I get to the hypnosis part, again, all I say is I've got my some key words that I can feed back in the session, use the client's language. All I say is, great, you know what, let's start getting this job done. Let's move it forward now. All you need to do is have a wriggle, get comfortable, put your head back on the cushions and close your eyes. And I'm just going to have a conversation with you. I don't talk to them. Again, I don't talk to them about the myths of hypnosis. I also, one thing that I do slip in somewhere, whether it's early in the eyes closed bit or not, is up to you. I give them permission to think, to have free thoughts. I say, you know what, before you close your eyes, if you start thinking things, if you suddenly remember, I've got to take the car to the garage at 3 o'clock and I've forgotten to phone the school, etc., that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. You can think anything you like. But what I will say is you don't really need the distractions at the moment. So when you do, if you do get any thoughts, just let them slide away to the left or the right. They're only distractions and we just carry on. Okay? Great. Because years ago, when I was a lot more naive, I'd get client sessions that wouldn't go brilliantly. The client would say at the end, oh, I was thinking things and I didn't know if I was allowed to, I didn't know if I should, and etc., etc., etc. So that can be the simple death of an otherwise good session. Remember, there's no such thing as a resistant client. No such thing. You also don't need to prove anything. I genuinely don't, I'm not being flippant, I genuinely don't understand why hypnotherapists test for anything. I don't understand it. For example, how long have you been doing this? Do you need to test? Do you need to prove some strange phenomena to the client? Having told the client, think about this, having told the client that they are fully in control, etc., etc., you then demonstrate that by freezing their arm. That's a complete contradiction. So the cynical client is going to go off on a train of thought, the spell's broken. This is where all these endless posts on Facebook come from. I had a client who wouldn't go into hypnosis. Yes, they would. Well, you've just told that same client that they're in and out of hypnosis all day. And when you drive your car, you don't have to think about using the pedals and using the gear shift, etc., etc., etc. So you've told them they're in and out of hypnosis all the time, and then you've managed to not guide that person into hypnosis. You see all of the absolute garbage contradictions from this ritualistic way that we're taught the structure of a therapy session. We can do so much more. Get the rule book, chuck it out the window, and be yourself, because you'll probably find that you're brilliant. Speak to you soon.